For film 1, I was a cinematographer. My film was a confession scene. The dialogue in the film meant that the backstory wasn't necessary, and the title we were given was The Unexpected. Location was a problem, as it was very cramped, and the other choices didn't fit the script well enough, and didn't have the right amount of space to fit in the light equipment. For my research, I looked into the native ISOs and how well different cameras work in low light. Diffusion was a big thing when researching, and when trying to book out kit from the university, we faced quite a difficult obstacle. All the diffusers were booked out. So to get around this problem, I had to source them externally, which meant contacting friends and looking at rental prices. To get the lighting I wanted, I need to look at confession scenes already out there. For example, American Psycho. I like the Rembrandt-style lighting they used and the connotations of good and evil they bring. The filmmaker's iBook was quite a big hand when it came to help writing out the shot lists. In the book it shows you how different shots and blocking in the shots helps aid the story. I think that I have done a reasonably good job. I am happy with how the lighting was set up and it met my expectations to a degree. I had planned things well enough so that the gaffer and I knew what needed to be done. This saved a lot of time. In terms of things that didn't go to plan, the location would be at the top of the list. We had 3 locations to choose from and we chose the one that would offer the most amount of space. Even then it was very cramped and I couldn't use any flags to block out light either, so shots didn't come out exactly how I intended. I would be more forceful when it came to the script being ready and a strong idea in place. In an ideal situation, we would have had the script and treatment ready within the first 3 days. Then this would have meant that we could have had more of a choice on the camera and other gear that we could have used, because we would have a film date earlier in advance and the kit I wanted wouldn't have already been booked out. In terms of lighting, I would have liked to have a rim light to draw the character out of the scene a bit more. Film language is a massive part of my role. Everything I did, I had to think to myself how it would aid the story. What I had planned to do was to have high angles looking down on the protagonist in the first 4 scenes, and the camera eye level for scene 5 to 7, then low angles from scene 8 to 9. This was to show that how the character is going from vulnerable and scared, and show the interrogator is the one in power, and that it is revealed that he is a psychopath, and the angles flip and our protagonist is the one in power. For film 2, I was the cinematographer again, and as some research for this film I looked at the Krista Kenworthy's book, Master Shots. In this book it shows you 100 different camera techniques, and I looked mainly at what he calls detail in the crowd. It says by using a long lens, a shallow focus, careful lighting, you can pull an individual out of a crowd, shown in here in the graduation scene. The idea behind the film was to make the audience think that the girl was writing a letter to herself for the future, but the film ends with her giving it to her future child. We wanted something light-hearted and without any dark connotations, and a happy family is usually quite rare with student films, so we thought this may make it stand out a bit more. During the planning process and on set, I wanted to make sure the characters and the audience were on the same level, so on the wide shots I tried to keep the camera at the same height and not look up or down at the character. This was to try and make her more relatable to the audience by putting everyone on the same level. For this film I had to look into 2 different camera systems and the 2 different native ISOs, but what was different about this shoot was that some scenes were going to be shot in slow motion. So nearly all of the non-slow-mo shots were done with a Canon C100, and then all of the slow-mo shots and some of the normal pace shots were done on the Sony FS5. I received quite good feedback with the role I played as a cinematographer. I was happy with the lighting choices I made. One thing that I was quite happy was with the bedroom scenes. This is because both the younger girls' bedrooms I set up lights to leave a shadow of the blinds on the wall, and in an older woman's bedroom I did the same. This hopefully would have helped the audience to link the 2 scenes together. I feel like the planning aspect of the film went quite well on my end of things. I had floor plans of everything so I could easily plan where the lights were going to go and camera positions, so when we got to the location all I had to do was follow the plan. It made it very efficient. There was quite a lot of conflict in the script writing process, which thankfully for me I wasn't a big part of, and there were some problems with people on set, but other than that, those 2 minor things, not a lot went wrong. Getting the right equipment was quite difficult. The lenses we wanted were all booked out, and the diffusion kits we wanted were all booked out as well as a lot of the lights. so we had to settle for what was available. In the future, I will pester the producer to get risk assessments and bookings done on the day of the assignment brief so we can get the kit we want. On the shoot, what the Canon C100 can't do is shoot in RAW, so when you try to colour grade there isn't much information at all to work with. This then led to some very weirdly tinted highlights. I feel as if the lighting style I used may have been a bit too dark, and I should have made things a bit brighter. I would have focused on making the scenes with the older woman brighter, because that is when she is meant to be thriving in her life and passing down wisdom to her daughter. Some other feedback I received was that the older bedroom scenes looked a bit dingy, and the sky was blown out in the proposal scene. Now looking back, I could have booked out a polarizer and shot slightly underexposed, and then bring it up ever so slightly in post. For film 3, I was the editor. So this film, I was the editor and co-producer. This ended up being quite difficult, mainly because on the day of the shoot, the director disregarded the shot list and decided to work at the top of his head. This made matching shots up according to the script and shot list very difficult. We also had to match cut at the end of the film, which ended up not being very well matched, so I had to crop in a very large amount of the frame. This led to a lot of resolution being lost. A book that I looked at for this film was Editing and Montage in International Film and Video by Luis Morante. It talks about in action sequences, parallel editing is used to increase tension. This is something I implemented in the scene where the painter is throwing paint onto the canvas as well as stroking it. So by cutting these clips together in a parallel fashion, then it can help increase the tension of the scene. Originally I thought I would be editing on my laptop and that it was going to be shot in RAW 4K, which would mean I would have to convert all the files into proxies and then edit using those, but instead it ended up being shot on ProRes 422, which was the computer I was using was able to handle quite well. I think as a team we worked quite well, apart from some conflict between the writer and the director in the pre-production stages. The costume and props worked well, and the final shot of the man in the hospital looked really nice, which is my favourite part of the film in terms of lighting and realism. On the day of the shoot, the actor informed us that he had to leave 5 hours after he got there, which meant that the shots had to be cut and we had a very short amount of time to set up and capture each shot. This ended up being quite bad because our director and cinematographer had to reconfigure the shots they wanted, and the director had to edit the story as he was going along. I think overall the idea we came up with didn't work very well. It was quite a big risk, and it would either look really good and sound really good, or look really bad and sound really bad, and I think we ended up with the second. We wanted to make something with decontextualised sound, and we initially thought of doing this with a pianist strung as a performed song, but then we settled on a painter. Because the film was so short, there wasn't much to edit, and there wasn't any dialogue, so sounds didn't really need to be matched up, apart from the Foley. This meant that I did feel slightly disengaged. For film 4, I did sound and lighting. I looked into how to properly record sound, and what I learnt was that I could turn the gain down when I was recording it, and then in post I can bring it up and it has less noise. And if it still has noise, I can reduce it further in Adobe Audition. By highlighting the top section of the waveform editor and deleting it, this didn't affect any of the actual sound, instead it just gets rid of the hiss noise. As a team, we all worked very effectively in pre-production and post-production and production. In post, the editor was very quick and soon handed me the files so I could begin work on the sound. I used multiple layers of sound to create an atmosphere, and the shop scenes I went outside and recorded cars going past and then panned those to the side of the door in the shop so it sounded more realistic. I think the script that was written may have been slightly too complex, and when it came to the edit everything felt slightly cramped, so the story didn't work as it was originally intended. I would do some more research on how to make the audio sound a lot crisper, and talk to people who have done sound well in the past to see if there are any tips. I wish I could have shot a wild track at the end of every take. This is so that I could get the microphone closer to the subject or action without having to worry about the mic getting in the way of the camera.